Welcome to episode 195 of Counterparts. The song we're covering today is Between Sun and Moon, part 5 of our series from this record, Counterparts. And we have a great panel of guests today. We have Paul, we have myself, we have Alex, the other Paul, below other Paul, and we have Shane on as well. So I don't think I actually did a
Hello.
round table with Shane before, so this is going to be really cool. So we're going to start with the lyrics and get right to it. And I'm going to read the first verse and we're going to have a little chit-chat about it. There is a lake between sun and moon, not too many know about. In the silence between whisper and shout, the space between wonder and doubt. Nice tidy verse. So who would like to kick the ball on this?
You can start it off. Lyrics co-written with Pi Dubois, actually borrowed or submitted from the poem that Pi wrote. There's a lake between sun and moon, and taking it back to the Egyptians believing that the lake, water, land between living and the dead. So in keeping with the theme of duality for the album, the lake between sun and moon crossover from living to dead. So there's your duality.
That duality that's going along with the rest of the songs on the Counterparts album.
And if anyone was watching Moon Knight on Disney Plus, they've seen those scenes too.
That's awesome. Loved that show. And without the being familiar with the Dubois poem, the thing that I got from this was the between part. And there's I don't know if maybe it's a Buddhist tenet, but I know what they talk about a lot in the realm of meditation, about the space between the action and the reaction, where you take that pause and think about how you want to respond versus just a reaction. And I see a lot of that here, a lot of the space between, the gap between, the lens between. That's a lot of what I take from the song too, is just that you have the opposing views, the dualities, but then I think this one kind of is diving into that middle part between the two.
Yeah, the counterpart.
Which is also interesting to think of
Nice.
Neil in the garden talking about the future disappearing in a moment without a moment. Or yeah, I'm butchering the lyric. Obviously, we're not even there yet. It's albums away. But the idea of just considering, and it's been studied in physics too. Just how that aspect of, I'm going to say it, free will. What do we have for free will as human beings, and are we kind of on automatic, even though we might think we're conscious? Or what kind of level of consciousness do we have between we see something and we respond, or we react to different actions, possibly?
Well, and the compatibilist has it both ways. The predetermined action, they make the decision, and that determines which next free action they have. So.
Well said.
What do I need to read the lyrics to you, Alex, for the garden to solidify your point, or the future disappears into memory with only a moment between?
Thank you. It's not as if
there's that word again.
It's I know between. It's not as if I wasn't actually playing that in the car yesterday while driving. It's just sort of, hi, let's click record and go, duh.
Sounds about right.
I was trying to remember it too, and it's not like it's one of my favorite lines Neil ever wrote. So
yeah.
So what you're saying is you were frozen between the wheels.
Exactly. Yes.
Frozen between the live recording and
It will be an episode of, how many times they use the word between. You never know. But very cool. Excellent. So this brings us right to the first chorus. This is a fine place, shining face to face. Those bonfire lights in the mirror of sky, the space between wonder and why. And then he goes into yes, to ah, to yes. Why the sun, why the sun? And in the poem, this is actually worded a little differently, especially this part. Yes, to to yes. I found it very interesting what he grabs from that poem, which you actually, if you guys want to check out the poem, there's a link on YouTube of Pi reading the poem. which I think is really good. It's a very lengthy poem, and it's just interesting to compare the two together. We were just talking about this briefly before we started tonight. How much he actually grabs from the poem for this song. This is a very, very tidy bit, which works great because whatever Pi and Neil would get together, they would sort of Neil would take what Pi would present and then formulate that into the workings of the band. And so far as by this point, when this song came out, they had their own publishing, either company or venture called Pi Arts. So I don't know if it's still around, but I found that as an interesting little factoid to toss into this discussion. So going back to the chorus, this first chorus, what do you guys have to say about it?
Would you consider that the chorus though? Or
You
like
know-
a second verse? I always saw it as a second verse. I don't want to be like to semantics, but
Yeah, it could be like a chorus one, perhaps, because he does bring back that later on, but it's reworded, excuse me. So I think
right.
in my ears, it sounds like a chorus. Just the fact that he brings it
Yeah, I'm
back.
splitting hairs at this point, but
And also, I mean, if we were talking about, which I usually shoehorn in, obviously, or if we were talking about Life Since Parts, I mean, he kind of had that one riff that, the guys felt was kind of Rolling Stones-ish, although different generation was thinking, well, those two Dawkins songs, that one Kiss song. But the idea there is that, for the verse that Rob just read, I mean, the idea is he's got that kind of dyad double stop riff that he's playing, and then once we get into this is a fine place, he kicks into just more big kind of a bar chord strum, which at that point kind of marks a shift usually in a song section. So kind of a bit of an A minor, A Dorian vibe with the riff, and then he kicks into some 5/4/1 type of action for the chorus. So I'm going with Rob. I'm saying we're on the chorus.
Yeah, it kind of feels like that to me as well. That musical setup, like you just mentioned, where now the chords are bigger. It's not about that opening riff anymore to allow for the lyric to come out.
well, just that first line, that, like this is up, like it drives you, right? Like it's from the first verse, so which is a bit, I guess, softer.
And then choruses are usually repeated. You don't have to be Neil Peart repeating lines. Obviously, most songwriters are repeating the chorus. So he's singing. He has "This is a fine place, shining face to face." Then later, "This is a fine place to hesitate." Not that I'm trying to jump ahead, but obviously a certain similarity there that marks the chorus. I think we've defined the chorus. I'll stop talking.
Well, there's a lot of times in their songs where you're thinking, are we at the chorus yet? Is this a pre-chorus? What is this part? And I think it's kind of one of those. But that line, that shining fine place, a fine place, shining face to face. To me, that's that space between the faces, between two people. And it makes me think of another between, which is the spaces in between leave room for you and I to grow. So maybe instead of just focusing on what are the different this person and this person, or that person and me, it's what's that space in between, where if you can bridge that gap a little bit, one or both of you is growing when you're focusing on that space in between instead of just what's at either end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And if I do it the right way, Shane, adding to the point you made just a bit ago, this is a fine place, staying in the present moment where you're at, be it spatially, geographically, or existentially. It's here. It's not going ahead. It's not behind. So,
yeah, and you're still in between time for bringing that little bit in there, So where you came from, where you're at, where you're going, sort of idea. I like the imagery of shining face to face. Even though it's like the idea of like a bonfire, and then you have that sort of reflection of the bonfire on all the figures around the bonfire. I just like that imagery of, and the sky seems to reflect the fire as well. So that's another sort of, water is reflective. So you have all these different bits in this little part, and it's a fine place. So I like that.
A little bit of symbolism too, with the idea of the bonfire lights of something that's really organic and people are hanging, doing their thing, but the mirror of sky kind of speaking to maybe we're thinking we can't stop thinking big. If I keep borrowing from Clockwork Angels today, but actually getting it correct, because I'd have to try to screw up I can't stop thinking big.
Yeah.
You're ahead of your time, Alex. You're just way ahead of your time.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
I like that.
Very cool. Nice. All right. Well, moving on to the next verse, we'll read that. So there is a fine line between love and illusion, a fine place to penetrate, the gap between actor and act, the lens between wishes and fact. Yeah. Thickening plot, perhaps?
I kind of picture two people meeting and there's a spark and they think they're in love, but maybe if they just give it some time, maybe there is a spark, but maybe it's not as big as they thought it was. Maybe it's a nice relationship or a friendship, but the illusion of love, because it feels so good, feels so new, feels so attractive there at the beginning, but just leave that space between waiting to get to that next step instead of rushing to it. And maybe you'll find out that it's something different.
Yeah, what he said. But
Very
no,
good.
but I agree.
Wait, what did I say? I wasn't listening.
But you're right. There's a fine line between true love and what's an illusion, right? How many times have you heard people like, "This is it. This is the one," and then 3 months later, "Oh my gosh, I can't." Then they fall apart. It was an illusion. It seemed, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it's almost like infatuation in a way, or whatever.
And I say that, with having a friend who is going through a thing. And I just kept thinking, just wait, give this some time and don't jump to something. And just realize, y'all helped me realize this song would have been perfect for that.
Rush provides music for any occasion, any situation.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's really the gap between actor and act was I think that was in Pye's original poem, I think, but he did different wording on it. Again, really great thing
He
to do
did
if you wanna- yeah.
You said the
It's-
gap between actor and audience. That's what
Yeah,
he said.
there's a fine place between actor and audience. This is the fine line of living the moment experience, this fine deliverance, which certainly speaks to a lot of what Neil has to say in general. I mean, obviously those two are on the same wavelength, but as Rob mentioned, that Neil had to turn it into something that would be lyrical for the band.
Yeah, I think if you had to sing that line you just read, Alex,
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill you.
Well, no one really wants me to sing anything, so
Well,
I
I mean,
think
yeah.
I'll resist.
We'll have
I
Tal
beg
sing.
to differ.
Yes.
I think
Anything
just
but-
if Getty had to sing all that, it'd be
Well, Getty probably would have vetoed it and said, "No, I can't do this. It's too much. Like, let's condense it a little bit better." And we all know that Neil did a lot of work with Getty to edit lyrics and make it work, right? So
exactly. Yep, absolutely. Yes, and then
And another
moving on-
song it makes me think of. Oh, so another song it makes me think of the lens between wishes and fact, between how it is and how it ought to be.
Yeah, and the lens too is reflective. It could be a literal lens like glasses, or it could just be a lens like any kind of device used to look at something a bit more finer and in tune, so to speak. I love the imagery again with that. Yeah, when you have that lens, you could see things. You could change the aperture. You can let more light in. Of course, light is reflective as well. So having that aperture open, you get to see a situation, like you mentioned, Shane. You get to see it clearer, and you can proceed forward.
Well, at that point, if you want to bring in the camera references, people could say that photography is lying. Actually, I there's a photography teacher at a nearby college who made that statement to a class once, that because obviously you can certainly you have that entire scene. If it's a modeling shoot, you have just chaos or wreck, and then here's this beauty just in this little span that's being revealed. And then it certainly speaks to journalism, photojournalism, as far as what's being shown, what isn't being shown. So what's just to the left of the camera, basically. So what is there, the lens between wish and fact. So thank you, Rob, for bringing that one up.
You got it. And there's somebody in the panel that does photography too, right? I don't know who that is.
I teach photo classes. So yes.
Yes. So you're the.
If we start talking about perception, I'm going to end up getting all presto on this, and I can't do that again. So.
No worries, no worries. All right, so moving on to our next bit is the other chorus. I guess this could be like a chorus two, maybe, or I don't know. This is a fine place to hesitate. Those bonfire lights in the lake of sky, the time between wonder and why. So, slight difference between the first entrance of this bit to right now. So, what shall we say about this?
I think this is the crux, the hesitate part. This is the time between wonder and why. This is to me, this is what the whole thing is about.
Well, I also think in terms of if anyone or everyone would be familiar with the Alexander technique, which was used as the title of an article on Alex Lifeson in a Guitar Player magazine back around 1990-91, but basically a focus of looking at how we move. Certainly something that is instructed, or instructive for musicians, for dancers, for people involved with acting. And the idea there with that, not that I'm an Alexander teacher, but having worked with about a dozen of them over since the century began, the idea there is when you're about to engage in an action, the idea is to have an intentional pause, even if for a second, to consider, oh, maybe I do need to allow my head to be free and not have my shoulders up. Maybe I want to make sure I'm straightening this, and I shouldn't say straightening because an Alexander teacher in the audience would probably have to come by and smack me because I should use the term directing. So there is that aspect of I'm about to take action, but perhaps I allow myself, as I was, kind of alluding to earlier, that conscious thought, that hesitation to make sure that I'm not going to do something that's going to, eventually destroy my body, which, certainly comes with age. So why contribute to it?
Good point. Yeah, it's very easy to hold tension. And I think at this point in the song, it's like, it's not really about tension, but it's like the plot has gotten to that point, as you just mentioned, Shane. Now we're at this pivotal part. This is where everything, the crux of the biscuit is right here for us to munch on. So it's really interesting.
But I think there is tension though.
Yes.
Oh, there is tension though, because you always want to go to one side or the other, the resolution, and it's hard to just enjoy that dissonance.
Yeah, you're in between that, the problem and the solution, if there is a problem. But whatever the situation is, you're in between that, and eventually you get to that resolve. I think even the music itself there, it's got that energy again, So I don't know if there's anything that builds musically in there. I think it's just that lead in to the bridge where they really kind of let loose a little bit. And I did a write-up on this part of the song, the bridge, not to toot my own horn, but on the Spotlight Saturday post on Instagram. If you guys get a chance to check those out in the audience, it's a great place to go to get a little factoids. I learned a few things as well, talking about the bridge section of the song. And he was kind of, I guess Alex thinks the song is more like a 60s sort of feel to it. It was like a sort of a nod to his influences in such a way where, whether it be Keith Richards or Pete Townsend, how he approaches playing acoustic guitar with the power that he presents as a player. So I think in this part of the tune leading in, which this part leads into the bridge, the music is instrumental. Neil's doing these fills akin to a Keith Moon type of approach. So there's energy there, So there's got to be a reason why that music is placed at this part of the tune. I think, Shane, you touched on that, where now we're getting to the crux of what's happening here. And the music is reflecting that. So this bridge is the counterpart to the sort of the chorus that just came before it, in my estimation. So what do you guys have to say?
And usually solos and bridges occur 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way through the song. Certainly anyone who's an accomplished songwriter, however many albums in of your career, you would want to make sure you're structuring things in a way that is effective, is the term I'm going to use. And in that respect, clearly they are. And that's the thing I was saying, like with Nobody's Hero. In some of these other songs, there are some short guitar solos. Well, this has a short bridge. They kind of go through, what was that, maybe 8 measures, I think. So they kind of, like you're saying, kind of do a bit of a strum, very Pete Townsend, obviously, as Leifson said, as Rob was saying earlier here, leading into kind of a return of the riff that leads into a solo, which is it's kind of like some of those 1980s chord solos that Leifson was doing, especially on Grace Under Pressure. And that's something that if you're in a three-piece band and you want to maintain a certain degree of thickness, since, in many solos, like, I mean, Limelight's a perfect example where the solo becomes very, as they've said, very lonely, very sparse, because in many cases, even not using Limelight as an example, you got bass. Okay, how active is the bass? Well, you're still losing that rhythm guitar part. So what Leifson did here was kind of maintain a little bit of the rhythm guitar in his solo. And as they say, that's something that anyone who's played in three-piece bands or, bands without a rhythm guitarist, it's sort of, how do I maintain this solo and not have it just become sparse? Sometimes it works, Limelight, once again. Sometimes it's sort of, ooh, that dropped away. And that's something they kind of did here, is, sort of building the lyrics, building the music, got that Who for the 8 measures, a little bit of a tribute to their heroes. Then let's kick into a short solo also. How do we keep that energy going? Well, they did. And I obviously I won't repeat myself because,
Very well said. Yes.
maybe I rambled a little bit too.
No, I like that. Was great. I like that.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to contribute to this a little bit before we move on to the next part? All right, onward and upward. Okay, so we are at pretty much getting close to the end of this ditty. Some need to pray to the sun at high noon. Some need to howl at the midwinter moon. Reborn and baptized in a moment of grace. We just need a break from the headlong race. Headlong, huh? Ah, yes to yes, to to yes. Why the sun? Why the sun?
Going back to what I said at the top of at the start, if you go back to the poem, The Hollow Men, that one thing that Neil said in the interview, I think it was the interview either with Mark Allen that he did when they were doing publicity for Counterparts, or the world premiere. I can't remember which interview, but using the Hollow Men as an inspiration, with the people crossing over from the land of the living to the land of the dead, they couldn't raise their heads up. They were, whether it be out of, I believe it was out of despair, as they were watching the souls cross over, they were looking at them. So the whole point was to still keep their head high. So the idea is, as they're watching this happen, I can't remember which line, reborn and baptized in a moment of grace. We just need to break from the headlong race. In other words, again, being present in where you're at and appreciating the moment for what it is. In other words, you're still part of this journey. You're present in this moment for what it is. You're still in it. In other words, that's how I took it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think even
Hope being the theme.
What's that, Paul? I'm sorry.
Hope being the theme, even in that transition.
Yeah, I think even too the sentiment of the poem from T.S. Eliot and the phrasing that was used in the poem was something that Neil brought in to this tune. So I think it's the second time, well, the first of 2 times on this album where he was influenced by T.S. Eliot, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think the next tune on the record, I think, had a T.S. Eliot influence. I'm not 100% sure.
I have to look at it.
I might be wrong with that. So, but yes,
Stay tuned.
an influence nonetheless.
Yeah. Stay tuned for Alien Shore.
There you go. I think
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. So I guess at this stage, I guess we're getting pretty close to wrapping up, and we could maybe mention a favorite live version of the song,
Or the only live version.
or the only one. If anyone got to see it live, or
I was bringing that up before we began taping, when it was just 3 of us sort of hanging out, and the reference of Getty saying that, on the Vapor Trails tour, that we haven't played this live yet, and we're going to throw this out there for John Entwistle with that Who reference. And that's where I would also say too that the riff is a little bit of a different riff, and like I was saying, for when I was really considering this riff, I was thinking of songs like "It's Not Love" or "Standing in the Shadows" from Dokken, where George Lynch was playing these double stops, finger picked, and the song "Domino" from Kiss, where Bruce Kulick was doing a similar thing too. And this is 1986, 87, 92. Not that Alex Lifeson was necessarily probably listening to those, but I mean, they toured with Kiss, they toured with Dokken, etc. But for my money, it's the sort of thing where looking at that live version, bringing it back to the live version, Lifeson just goes all in on the pick, just kind of just hard line on the Les Paul. He wasn't really going for any hybrid picking, any finger picking. It's just he's just punching that thing a la a la Pete Townsend. Wow, I'm murdering names of rock stars that I've known like literally my whole life. Steve Townsend.
Steve Townsend.
Yeah, it's
his little brother.
Yeah, it's his little brother that was the secret influence here.
Stevie Townsend.
Do it, Townsend.
Yes, but then again, if someone is this far into a song that maybe some people might not look upon as their go-to on Counterparts, thanks for being with us and having fun. Not that I'm trying to host, but I'm just trying to throw the ball away from my constant mistakes and the inability to speak the English language that I've also heard since my entire life.
Well, I mean, it is a Monday at the time of this taping, so we get the weekend.
Yeah, recovered from the weekend.
Monday.
Yeah. Blame it on Monday.
Yeah.
We'll get a kick to the Mondays.
Yeah. Give myself my.
But did they only play it once on the Vapor Trails tour?
I believe so.
Like only on that tour, I should say. I mean, maybe more than once, but they didn't play it on the Counterparts tour.
That's good.
No, they didn't play it on Counterparts tour.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because you had the Counterparts tour, Test for Echo, and then obviously you get up to Vapor Trails, and I certainly saw all three of those, and I'm taking Getty's word for it when he says we hadn't played it before. But the question is, did they play it? Yeah, like you're saying, did they play it on as a standard set list? Did they play it beyond that?
Correct us in the comments if we're wrong.
Yes.
Yes.
But then again, it's YouTube, so you're allowed to be wrong, and the comments could be wrong. Or prove us wrong, or prove us right.
But is it like losing it on the R40 tour? They didn't play it at all the shows. They only played it I think it was a handful, 5 or 6 shows. Maybe I'm wrong. Comment. I don't care. But my first tour was Time Machine, so I didn't see the earlier tour. Sorry.
Yeah, same here. I missed Counterparts, so that's definitely a regret of mine. And we actually have an episode on regrets in the YouTube channel, so you can check that out.
On regrets?
Regrets,
Cool.
no regrets. So
no regrets.
That was like 181, I think was that episode. But yes.
I missed that. I regret it.
I was on it, so I regret being on it. So it's all good. Kidding. So, anybody else want to jump in with a final word before we call it a day? No. Very cool. Well, I thank you all for watching this episode of this roundtable episode on Between Sun and Moon. Please feel free to comment below. Please feel to like and subscribe. Check out Rush Lyrics on Instagram. Check out all the different Spotlight Saturdays, all the different activity happening on Instagram. So definitely check out all the past episodes on this record. There's a few of them. There's 4 before this one. So please comment below. We read the comments. We will respond. And we thank you all for being here. Thank you to this esteemed panel. We had a lot of good contributions to this song. We really appreciate you being here. So on that note, we bid you adieu. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.